Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Slay It, where we dare to dream big. So, hopefully, you saw my last video, and if you did, then you'll know that I recently moved to Boston about a month ago in May 2025, and I'm already fitting in great into the East Boston community. I've met so many people who've given me so many amazing opportunities around Boston, and I'm interviewing two of them today. And I talked about them extensively in my last video and how if I hadn't met them, then I probably would have never gotten any of the opportunities that have allowed me to fit in so well in the Boston community. So I'm interviewing them today, and let me introduce them to you. So I'd like to give a very, very warm welcome to Kannan Thiruvengadam, the director of Eastie Farm, and Bill Masterson, the director of Tree Eastie. It really is great to have both of you here on the show. You've done so much for the community, you've united the community, and I'm just glad that I get to have the chance to interview you guys here on Slay It. So without further ado, let's get started.
Hi,
So I'm just
Vedant. It's good to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Likewise, thanks for the introduction, Vedant.
Yeah, I'm just glad I get to have this opportunity to do this video with you guys. So I'm just gonna ask you guys to just not interview, to introduce yourself to the audience. Maybe tell something that you want, tell the viewer something about you that you want them to know. And yeah, I'll kind of just let you guys tell the viewers about yourselves. So I think we can start with Kannan for this one. So just tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Vedant. Hi, everyone. My name is Kannan Thiruvengadam. Originally from South India, I live in East Boston, which is a neighborhood of the city of Boston in Massachusetts. And I'm the director of Eastie Farm, which is an urban farm that works in partnership with rural farms and that works in the community to address food security and to create jobs and to empower young people. And I'm also the head of the board of the Friends of Belal Marsh, and I have a couple of roles in the city as well. Maybe that's good for now.
He's a tough act to follow, Vedant, because I'm just going to tell you that I'm Bill Masterson. A little bit about myself. I grew up in the Greater Boston area. My wife and I grew up in Greater Boston. We raised a family in North Andover, and then we moved back to East Boston. We moved back to the city, so East Boston, 6 years ago, actually, next month. Um, and yeah, we are the parents of three grown sons, and we have five grandchildren. We love to spend time with those grandchildren. And the purpose for me starting Tree Eastie 5 years ago or so was to address the tree canopy, the lack of tree canopy in East Boston. So I'm the founder, executive director of Tree Eastie, and love spending time in the community.
That's great. So wait, Bill, I have a question. Where are you currently?
I am currently in the Pine Tree State, which is the state of Maine. We just had you could see all the pine trees. We just had a storm blow through about an hour ago to add some much needed rain to the terrain. So I'm calling in from Maine, even though I live in East Boston. Try to spend as much time in Maine, winter, spring, summer, and fall as we can. It's the blood pressure goes down about 20 points when you enter into the state. It's a great place to be.
That's great. And it shows like how invested you are in making a difference in the environment in East Boston with Tree Eastie based on just where you are. It seems like you really love nature. It's kind of like where you go to kind of cool your brain down whenever you have a bit of a stress overload. Yeah, and
Absolutely.
it's great to see that you're so connected with nature. And Kannan, being from South India, that's like, wow, immigrating to America and making such a difference here in the community and just being invested in it all. I've talked to so many people already, and they've said how big a difference each of your organizations has made in their lives, and I'd like to thank you for that. So this next question is kind of comes off the idea that every great thing has to start somewhere. It didn't just pop up in the middle of nowhere and it was just great like to begin with. It started off small And then as time went by, it became into the great thing that it is. So that's kind of what this question is based off of. And the question is, how did you come up with the idea of Easty Farm for you, Kunman? And Bill, you kind of addressed this when you were talking about yourself, but maybe elaborate it on a little bit. How did you come up with the idea of Tree Easty? We can start off with you for this one.
Sure. So when my wife and I moved to East Boston, I'm retired. So I should have probably started with that up front. And so luckily I have some extra time on my hands, but I'm not one to sit still. And I love to spend time outdoors. So as I walked around the community, once I moved to East Boston, I realized that where were all the trees? They just did not seem to be a good tree canopy coverage. And more importantly, there were a lot of empty tree wells. So these were trees where trees existed in the past, but the trees had been removed for one reason or another. And we had some folks got together and we counted over 200 empty tree wells. So from that point of view, it was sort of low hanging fruit in that wouldn't it be great to be able to just replace the trees that were there at one point in time? And that's how we got started, was trying to work with the city to be able to allow us to plant street trees. It took a while. That was one of the original challenges that we had, to get the city to agree to allow us, because I'm sure that they're approached by a lot of friends groups who want to do things within the community, but they may dissipate and not necessarily follow through on some of their obligations. So it took us about a year to convince the city that we were the real deal and we were going to keep the promises that we made. And we tried filling up some of those. I think we started with 12 tree pits, got the trees planted correctly. The city was happy with the work that we did. We guaranteed that we would water those trees for the first 2 years, and we've been going onward and upward since then.
That's great. And I love how you said that you're retired, even though you're retired, you never like to stay still. And I feel like more people should be like that. It's like they think they're retired and they're like, well, that's it for me, can't do anything else. It's like even though it may not seem like you can make a difference where you are, you can. You can keep going. You shouldn't settle, because there's always something that can be done in the community. Like Bill did when, even though he was retired, he didn't stay still. He looked around in his community, he saw a difference that needed to be made, and he acted upon it. And soon enough, with some determination and resilience, he made a difference by starting Tree Easty and planting so many trees around the community of East Boston. That was a great introduction to what I'm sure will be an amazing episode of Slay It. So, Kanan, over to you. What was your reason for starting Easty Farm?
Oh, before that, I should say this idea of staying still. Bill may not be capable of that, but when I walk around the neighborhood, I see a lot of people who are just staying still. And because of Bill, do you know who those people are? They're trees. He's planted so many of those, and they stay in place and they make the neighborhood so beautiful. Thank you, Bill, for adding that to our city. It just is nice to walk down a street where there are more trees. So much nicer than when you're just exposed to this hot sun. So, I was happily doing technology, but I made the mistake of studying climate science for some reason. And then I was all freaked out and I basically quit my career and started looking for ways in which I can act on climate. And it's very personal in growing up in South India and seeing rivers drying up and reading in literature in this very old culture. There's so much literature from so many centuries ago, in some cases even millennia ago, about all these rivers flowing and the regularity and the prosperity. All of that you can read about and only read about, because it is not the case anymore. And I've seen trucks parked on these riverbeds collecting sand for building, and people building on these riverbeds. And so it's just like, it seems like something's horribly gone wrong. But as a child, I couldn't process that well. But when I studied climate science, much later in my life, I realized maybe that's what has been going on for the past several decades, if not even longer. I wanted to do something about it. at a global scale or a national scale or a regional scale. But in the end, when I realized there was this lot on my way from where I live in East Boston to where I take the subway that was abandoned and abused and underused, and found many community members who were all coming together for their own reasons too. There was one person who wanted to start a vegetarian, no, she was actually running a vegetarian restaurant. Her name is Monica, and she wanted to see if we could grow the vegetables ourselves. So there were different people with different reasons sort of coming together and saying, why don't we clean up this lot? And we started cleaning that up as community members and as volunteers. And we ended up getting through a long drawn out process, ended up getting that property conveyed, excuse me, to us. And we had to form an organization, and we thought of a name, and we came up with Eastie Farm. It's Eastie being a name that people call East Boston by fondly, and it used to be a farm long time ago. And so combining those ideas, we came up with the name, and then got the property conveyed to us, created a space where people from all kinds of walks of life and all parts of the world who live here in this beautiful neighborhood can come together and grow food together and laugh together, make music together. So it has become this beautiful space, the one on Sumner Street. And from there, it's gone on to become even bigger, to have more programs, to have young people um, making an income through a stipend and working on climate in so many different ways that they feel called to act. Excuse me. And so, yeah, it started as a simple measure as what can I do about climate? And the climate activists used to say to me, if not you, who? And if not now, when? And so that was sort of my motivations to let's figure out something to do. And this local small action turned out to be hard enough. And it's like fully consumes me to get to keep this work going. So that was the start.
Bravo. That's a great origin story. I love that.
Thank you.
Wow, I don't even know where to start. It's like I guess I just want to start off by saying I remember I was watching this one video about like making music, and it was about like how two people don't even need to speak the same language. They can just play. And I guess I'm kind of seeing that in what you just said just then. Like people don't even need to like have the same exact mission in order to make a difference in the community. They can find a way to come together and from there go towards making something together that can make a difference in their community in many different ways. Maybe one way is good for one person, one way is good for the other person. And I see that in your journey as well. Like you were walking by this abandoned lot like every day, and you were thinking in your head, what can I do about that? And then you saw other people that even though they didn't have the same missions as each other, they still were willing to do something. They're like, well, we're not doing the same thing. Why are we even caring about this anyways? It's it's just really amazing is what I'm trying to say about how people can come together and do this sort of thing. And I especially love when you said, if not you, who? If now, when? I feel like that's another attitude that's kind of lacking in a lot of people right now because it's true. If you I remember there was a saying which is be the change you want to see in the world. And I feel like this saying and that saying kind of go hand in hand. If more people thought of like how they can make a difference in the community, then the world really would be a better place. But I'm sure that this video is going to get a great outreach and more people will have access to these ideas so that we can just make our world a better place overall. So for our next question, this is kind of based off you guys recounting sort of what's happened at your respective organizations. And the question is, name a memorable event associated with Tree Eastie for Bill and Eastie Farm for Kannan, and explain why that event was memorable. So this will require a bit of going through the memory archives, seeing which of the events was like memorable for a good reason. And I think for this one, We can start off with Bill again. So, name a memorable event that was associated with Tree Eastie and why it was memorable.
Oh man, wow, so many special moments. I suppose the back to when we signed a memorandum of agreement with the city to be able to plant those trees on the streets, because we probably could have given away trees to people to plant in their yards. We probably could have planted some trees in people's yards, which we are doing and which is important. But we really initially tried to focus on providing more shade to the streets and to the sidewalks. And we were not going to be able to do that unless the city gave us the approval to do that. And it, like I said earlier, it took us a good 12 months to convince the city that we were who we proclaimed to be and that we were going to follow through on our mission. And that was a big deal for us to be able to finally get them to say, okay, let's give you guys a shot and see whether you do what you say you're going to do. And sure enough, I mean, we have now planted. Let's see, we just put our shovels away, so we're 505 trees planted, and that started with street trees, and it evolved into park trees and yard trees and schoolyard trees. In addition to the, I'm going to say probably 125 street trees that we've planted, we've also successfully had a program where we've enlisted owners of properties in East Boston to allow the city to plant trees in front of their homes to the tune of 150 trees. So that's been through a grassroots effort for us to be able to get out into the community and get people to sign an agreement that would allow, as an abutter, that would allow the city to plant a tree in front of their home. So that would have been possible without the credibility that we've built up with the city on the street tree program that we initially embarked upon, and that was at the core of our initial intention was to be able to add more shade to the sidewalks and to the streets. So because of that agreement that we had signed with the city in 2021, that allowed us to be able to really embark upon this mission.
I can see why that would be a memorable event because oh, sorry, my microphone. Um, I can imagine being in your position, right? Like you see something that needs to be done in your community, and for 1 year, it requires a lot of dedication and determination in order to fight for something you care about for a whole year with the city. So I admire that level of dedication. And if I were in your position, I would consider that probably one of the most memorable events of my whole journey with Tree
Yeah,
Eastie because it all starts with fighting for what you believe in, and you did that very, very well. And I'm seeing it's paying off in the community already because planting 500 trees, especially in a place which is a heat island, there's there's a lot of heat reception from a lot of the people who live on East Boston. Just planting 500 trees in the community is already such a great achievement that's making a difference in so many people's lives. So I think I can see why that would be a very memorable event for you, Bill.
sure is. Yep, thank you.
So we can move to Kannan now. So name a memorable event that was associated with Eastie Farm and explain why it was memorable.
Um, Many things come to mind. During COVID, I had always been working on, from a climate perspective, I'd always been working on food systems as opposed to hunger. Food systems meaning where is the waste going, wherever the supply is it being connected? Well, wherever the production is it being connected well to where the consumption is needed? Just thinking in abstract terms about the whole food system, and that's where my mind was going initially. And I wasn't thinking I will work on hunger and things like that because those should be solved automatically if you solve the bigger issues. And if somebody does want to work on just preventing hunger, then it would be more like a band-aid. I don't want to work on that. This is the kind of mindset I came from. But during COVID, I got a call from one of the kids in the schools where I used to go and do some nature ecosystem education. And I was connected to the kids and their parents through these WhatsApp groups. And some folks, the way they use these groups is just leave a voicemail as opposed to send messages. And not all the parents I connected with were speaking in English. So sometimes the kids would leave messages for me. And so one such kid, he left a message during the very early part of the pandemic. And the message said, "Mr. Kanan, I haven't eaten in 2 days."
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah. How can you hear that and go on, right? So that's a reality in our world, and that should not be allowed. So it changed me. It just transformed the way I felt about the acuteness of the need our own neighbors are feeling, and the injustice that is just so present right where we live in this rich country. So I kind of changed the way I approach things. At that point, it has to be um, we have to focus on what people need today and what we need to do today, here and now, that we need to act on before we think about tomorrow or the larger picture or the whole world. What is relevant in our neighborhood today? And so my perspective got shifted and grounded and focused after that. And that's when food security became like a central part of the work that we take on. We went on to do food delivery just to avoid people from standing in lines and getting more infections. We went on to reach out to folks who were maybe perhaps not documented and therefore were unwilling to reach out and ask for help. And we found ways to connect with them through others that we were already connected to. And we found ways to reopen restaurants that were shut down and to hire some of the kitchen staff and rescue food from food banks and places like that and bring it to the neighborhood and cook that food and bring it to people. We found ways to raise money and pay other restaurants who are capable of cooking thousands of meals while keeping their workers safe and then delivering that food to people in need through others who are doing 9 to 5 jobs from homes and then were able to show up and help with this effort. It was a massive, massive community undertaking where the community came together beautifully. And those of us who could handle the crisis stepped up to those of us who were much more vulnerable and couldn't handle it. And that connected people across linguistic, economic boundaries. And we got to play a very key role by being in the middle of it, by facilitating it, and by making it happen. And so that's something I'm never going to forget, I think. It's just, even though it's a shocking realization, but what it led to is another very positive lesson, I feel, where the community was able to come together and help itself in mutual aid and gain more strength in the process. So that's one thing that comes to mind. Another thing is I'm more of like a nature ecosystem kind of person, and I feel like as humans we consume too much already, and so with our houses, there's a lot of energy consumption and whatnot. So that has not been a focus for me. But one grandmother that used to come in the early days of EC Farm with her grandchildren, and she's from Colombia, and this was her time with her grandchildren. It was their time with their grandmother. And they used to just hang out and have a great time because we kept the space as an open space. We didn't say this lot belongs to you, that lot belongs to you, that kind of approach which some community gardens do. We don't do that. We open it up for the entire community. And because of that, a lot of people who have no access to land but have experience in growing food showed up. And it was a beautiful thing. And this grandmother who used to come every day, oh, sorry, not every day, every Saturday, that's when we had our volunteer events. And she used to just wave from the gate, from the entrance to me and then come in with a lot of joy and vivacity and work with her, the grandkids, and show us things. But one day, um, I looked up and I saw her standing at the entrance, but not coming in. And she wasn't saying anything. She was just looking at me from the entrance. And I walked up to her and she was a little teary eyed and she couldn't say anything. And she gave me a piece of paper that said 3,000, 3,000, 3,000, and then a line, 9,000. She's supposed to come up with first month, last month, and a security deposit that she cannot afford, or she's out of her house. And she was out. We lost a lot of people to gentrification in this neighborhood. And a lot of kids from those families also disappeared in those classes that I used to go and teach. And see the kids sitting on the floor and chatting and talking and doing things together. And then suddenly one kid would disappear, another kid would disappear, and it's because the families moved. And so that's another extremely hard thing that just was like it shook my system. But then, I realized if we're going to be here for people, we have to be here for all their needs, just not just the need that I'm concerned with, that not just the need that I have on my agenda, and that is my passion. But if you're going to help people, understand them as an entire person, as a family, as a member of the community, and all their needs, and make sure that you're seeing them for who they are in their entirety and work with them in that way. That was also pretty transformative. And that helped me, I think, maybe become better as a community engagement person. So those are some early memories, Vedant. Of
Wow.
those. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, let's just so for the first one with the child saying like I haven't eaten in 2 days, that's already like I don't think I've ever heard that before. Genuinely, that has to be one of the most like shook things that like I've ever heard on like my whole time at Slay. It's horrible. No one should have to deal with that. In fact, I remember I was reading over this food justice bill. There's going to be a hearing for it in about like a week or so, which would offer food organizations all across Massachusetts of grants of like up to $500,000 to offer more food distribution programs or food security programs to kind of combat the food insecurity that's widespread throughout Massachusetts. And I knew it was bad, but I didn't know that during COVID it meant that a kid had to forego eating for 2 days. I guess like and I remember there was this statistic as well about this county in Western Mass, about how 50% of adults are food insecure. And I get that it's adults that are food insecure, but I didn't realize that it was also kids who had to forego this as well. And I genuinely think like if I had heard that in that moment of time, I would have been transformed as well. Because I feel like with the climate crisis that we have on our hands as well, we focus so much on trying to do something about that, but sometimes that kind of derails us from being aware of our community as well. Because you need, as with everything in life, you need a good balance. You can't just focus completely on trying to assist the climate crisis or trying to assist people in the community. You need to try to do one while doing the other. And I think, Kanman, you've done a great job of reshaping your organization to do just that. So
Thank you.
I'm a part of Easty Farm as well, and one of the things that they have is called community supported agriculture or a CSA program. And essentially what it is it's a subscription plan. And what people can do is they can subscribe to receive fresh local produce from farms around Massachusetts for when is it? From like May to November? Is that when it is?
Yep, it's made in November. Yep.
Yeah, made in November. And if in case you don't know, East Boston is also a food desert as well. What that means is for the 60,000 people that live in East Boston, there's only one supermarket. And that's already I can see why that would affect so many people, like in today's times, let alone during COVID, when the whole world was locked down and it was increasingly difficult to go to the supermarket and get the goods that people need. So, once again, like I said before, I think you've done a great job of reshaping your organization to kind of take care of these issues in a way allows people to allows people to not have to forego their needs for 2 days like that little child did during COVID. So I admire you for your efforts there as well. Now moving to the issue with the Colombian lady as well. It's amazing how one moment people are so happy and they feel like so engaged in a community, and the next moment it feels like everything they've known is just gone. And I feel like we need more people in this org we need more people just in the world having to do something about that. People shouldn't have to like 1 second be like, very happy and then the next second be like very sad because everything has been taken away from them. So for both of you, I'm glad that both of you have made such a great difference in the community with your respective organizations. Like, I applaud you for your efforts, and I hope the viewers applaud you guys as well. We
Thank you.
genuinely need more love like the guys that you are giving to all the community members. We need more of that in this world.